And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Micheal Gaddis.
Welcome to the Micheal Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Micheal Gaddis of MichealGaddis.com and FrontierLoanGroup.com. I am here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. to talk about anything and everything related to real estate. Now, recently, I've had a lot of different attorneys on my show talking about various disciplines, from tax law to, estate planning to asset protection. And, I think one of the issues I have with attorneys sometimes are that sometimes they don't communicate very well to the masses. And I remember my wife was listening to the last show I did, and she said, it was a really good show. She says, but it got really complex for me. And she says, you really need to if you're going to have attorneys on, you need to make sure you have attorneys that can communicate to people really well. And I thought, I'd never thought about that before. That sometimes attorneys do have difficulty communicating with people and being able to maybe communicate an idea in a way that is interesting and that everybody understands. So I'm going to try my best to maintain that principle going forward, and I think I have the perfect guest today. I think that my guest today you're really going to like. She's a published author, and she's done a lot of different things, and she specializes in estate planning. So I'm going to give you a little bit. Her name is Brenda Geiger. Geiger's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to just give you a little information about Brenda. Mrs. Geiger's practice is located in Carlsbad, California. She's my neighbor. She's actually only about 5 to 10 minutes from my office, her office from my office. Her practice focuses on estate planning, asset protection, business planning, elder law, trust administration, and probate. She obtained her law degree from the University of San Diego School of Law, where she served as an editor for the San Diego International Law Journal and published a law review article. She also has authored 7 books on trusts, elder law, and business law topics, and is an active member of the North County San Diego Bar Association, the North County Estate Planning Council, and is a member of the editorial committee for the North County Lawyer magazine. On a more personal note, Brenda is married to Len, the CEO of a local technology company. They have 2 school-age children and 3 dogs, 2 German Shepherds, and a Belgian, how do you say that, Brenda?
Malinois.
Malinois. And she enjoys reading, writing, running, travel, and spending time with her family. Thank you, Brenda, so much for taking time out of your day to come and talk with us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
One of the reasons why I really wanted to have Brenda on relates something that happened to me personally. And I think if you guys listened to a show a couple weeks ago, I kind of told you what happened with my father. Now, when I was 8 or 9 years old, my father left my family. And when I mean left, I mean he left. He just disappeared for 24 years. Oh, and we did not know if he was alive, if he was dead. We didn't know a lot of things. Now, I'm not faulting my father. My father had issues that probably a lot of people, don't have to face in his life. One of his brothers died when he was very young in the Navy. He was saving somebody on a beach from drowning, and then when the Coast Guards came out and rescued her, he actually got caught in an undertow and he drowned. Oh. Then his other brother actually took his own life after 2 tours in Vietnam. My father actually was in Vietnam for 2 tours in the U.S. Marine Corps. And he's had a lot of problems in his life, and so he left. And I didn't hear anything from him for 24, 25 years. So finally I did find him. I was actually doing genealogy research, and a distant cousin says, hey, we know where your father is, and we know you haven't been talking to your father, and we could put you 2 together. And that was a really weird moment for me. But we did get together, and there was a lot of forgiveness and tears and things like that. But we didn't keep a very strong relationship. I mean, we talked maybe once a year, a couple times a year. So recently, I was advised that my father's live-in girlfriend of 14 years, she called me and told me that he was had the beginning stages of dementia. Oh. And she says, well, he's got some dementia. It's not too bad, but we don't know what's causing it. Well, shortly thereafter, she was diagnosed with cancer, and she died on December 2nd, really quick.
Wow.
Well, about 2 weeks after that, the police found my father walking on the streets. And, he didn't know where he was. He didn't know anything. So whatever dementia he had was accelerated by his grief. So he was put into a hospital, and all of a sudden, my sister was called because for some reason she was an emergency contact. She didn't know why. But all of a sudden now, I'm faced with dealing with a man's life that I hardly know. I have, eviction notice. I have all these crazy things going on in my life, and I'm trying to deal with him. There's no power of attorney in place. He has no trust. The hospitals are calling me, asking me if we're going to get a power of attorney. I mean, it is so overwhelming what is happening to my sister and I right now. I mean, and he lives in Florida, so it's like he's almost 2,700 miles away. I'm faced with all of these things, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I have estate planning attorneys on my radio show, and I stress the need for doing estate planning and putting these provisions in place so that these types of things don't happen. And even though my father and I don't have the normal father and son relationship, now I'm trying to help him, make medical decisions for him. I'm trying to make legal decisions as far as his real estate's concerned. All of these things I'm trying to do right now for a man I hardly know, and it's very difficult and very stressful. So when I saw Brenda, I said, I'm thinking, this is somebody I need to have come on here because I need people to know how important it is to do planning. And there's a reason why you call it planning because, if you plan, it's kind of like if you're on train tracks and you hear a train whistle in the distance and you start planning to get off the tracks instead of waiting till the train almost hits you before you get off the tracks. And with my father's
analogy.
That's right. And in my father's situation, the train is almost hitting us. Now, we thought that he might have these things in place, but in hindsight, I wish I would have called him as soon as she told me that he had some dementia, signs of it. I should have said, "Hey, what kind of planning does he have in place?" Now, Brenda, you've heard that. You just heard the story I told you. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is really important to plan, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because in your case, if he doesn't have those documents in place and he is too far gone to execute a power of attorney or healthcare directive or trust, there's a good possibility he's going to need a conservatorship in the state of Florida, which can be quite expensive, time-consuming. You've got to report everything you do to the court, including all the accountings, every penny that's spent or that comes into the estate. So it's a big ball of wax to deal with that kind of situation. But if he isn't too far gone, there's an opportunity, to still help.
Well, in my situation, I had to fly to Florida, which is why I missed a week a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that I met with an estate planning attorney down there, and he told me exactly what Brenda just said. And he said, look, if he has periods of lucidity where he goes, I can get a power of attorney if he's willing to do it. Thankfully, in my situation, I was able to get. He was lucid. The estate planning attorney went to the hospital. He was able to identify who he was and determine that he was in a good state of mind. So we were able to get a power of attorney in place. But what Brenda's saying is accurate. I mean, if you guys don't plan ahead and don't put these things in place, you could end up in a situation like mine. And I'm telling you, the stress from this is it's incredible. It's like an immense amount of stress dealing with the financial pressures and the medical pressures, all of which could be avoided or at least minimized if you had a plan in place.
Yeah, and Michael, another thing, I'd be happy to look at that power of attorney for you. I'm not a Florida attorney, but I have colleagues there that belong to the same organization that I do, so they do similar planning. But if you're only able to execute that power of attorney, you want to make sure to have certain provisions in there that allow you to create a trust on his behalf. So the power of attorney is only as good as what's in the document. So if it doesn't allow you to do it, I don't care what state you're in, you're not going to probably be able to do it. So you've got to be very careful with that kind of document. So having more rather than less in this particular kind of a situation and making sure it's an immediate power of attorney, those are two key things.
Well, I just wanted to stress to everybody listening right now, whether you're in your car or at home, that when I bring somebody on like Brenda, I'm being extremely sincere in my belief that you need to do these types of things. And letting them go only creates stress. Maybe not for you. It could be for your children. It could be for somebody else who's going to have to come in and take care of you after. And, no one plans on anything bad happening. No one plans on it. I mean, no one sits in their car and go, oh, boy, today something bad's going to happen. But it does happen. Things do happen. This is life. This is real life. So you need to plan accordingly and just have some insurances in place that if something does, that it's going to be an easy process for the people who are going to be left. Now, Brenda, why don't you tell us, just simplify what a will is, what a trust is for us.
So a trust is, just think of it as just like a contract. So instead of having to have a will submitted to the court and go through this probate process, which a lot of people are familiar with, if you're not, it's when someone dies and they have a will, or if they don't have a will, you go to the court and you're asking permission to pay all of the decedent's expenses and then when everything's done, to distribute the money to the heirs. I'm oversimplifying, but that's basically what the process is. But the reason in California we like to do trust-based planning is because our probate process is pretty long. We had some budget cuts. It was a long process before the budget cuts, but for instance, in the North County San Diego court, we closed our probate division about 2 years ago, and now everything funnels through 2 judges down in the San Diego courthouse. Now, they do have some overflow judges that are from other areas that come in and help, but you can only imagine what this does to the docket. And even for a simple probate, we're looking at 16 to 24 months at this point. If it's a more complicated matter, some 2-3 years or even longer. So it's long. It costs a lot of money. So the preferred method is to set up a trust. We call them revocable trusts. That just means that you can modify it any time by amendment. You can revoke it. You can put assets into it. You can take assets out. It's no difference in the way that you report on your tax return. It's just you in a different form. So your Social Security number is the tax ID number for the trust. So it just think of it as a contract between you and yourself. I know that sounds a little silly, but that's really what it is.
Well, we have to go to break now, but after the break, we're going to continue our conversation with Brenda Geiger of GeigerLawOffice.com. You're listening to the Micheal Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
If you've got questions, we've got answers. AM 1170, The Answer.